Have you ever stopped to wonder, who are you, really? The person you call me, is it the name on your passport, the face in the mirror, or that constant voice chattering away in your head? Ah, but here's the great cosmic joke. What if I told you that you don't really exist, at least not in the way you think? What if the self you've spent your whole life protecting, improving, and identifying with is just a phantom? A mirage in the desert of consciousness. You see, from the moment we are born, we are given labels. You are John, you are Sarah, you are this, you are that. And like a child given a role in a grand theatrical performance, we play our part to perfection. But we forget one crucial thing. It's all just a play. The ego, the self, this I that we so dearly cling to, it's nothing more than a narrative, a story told by the mind. It's a trickster, whispering in your ear, convincing you that you are separate from the world around you. But look deeper. Where does this self begin and where does it end? If you peel back every layer, your thoughts, your body, your emotions, like a river that cannot be separated from the sea, you are not apart from life. You are life. The trees, the wind, the birds, the sky, these are not things outside of you, they are you. But the illusion of the self creates division. It turns life into a battlefield of me against the world, when in truth there was never any division at all. Now you might wonder, if the self is an illusion, then who is asking the question? Who is listening? Who is watching? But that is the very heart of the mystery. The moment you try to grasp it, it slips through your fingers like water. So I invite you, don't just take my word for it. Look for yourself. Watch your thoughts. Notice how they come and go like clouds in the sky. Where is the thinker behind the thoughts? Is there one at all? If you truly see through the illusion, something remarkable happens. Fear dissolves, suffering lightens, and life, oh, life, becomes a dance, a flowing movement without a center, without a fixed identity to cling to. And when you stop clinging, you are free. But don't believe me, see for yourself. After all, the illusion can only survive as long as you refuse to look behind the curtain. The grand illusion of the self is perhaps the most deeply ingrained belief we carry, yet it is also the most deceptive. From childhood, we are conditioned to think of ourselves as distinct entities, separate minds enclosed within separate bodies, navigating a world that exists out there. We cling to this identity, convinced that there is a solid, unchanging I at the center of our experience. But the moment we look closely, the illusion begins to unravel. The self, as we know it, is not a fixed thing, but a process, a flowing stream of thoughts, memories, and sensations that arise and dissolve like waves on the ocean. Try to locate this I you believe yourself to be. You may point to your body, but every cell in it has changed countless times since you were born. You may point to your mind, but your thoughts come and go without your control. Who, then, is the thinker of thoughts? If you were truly in control, would you not choose to stop worrying, to silence the voice in your head at will? The self is nothing more than a story, a narrative, constructed by the mind to create a sense of continuity. Yet, like a mirage on the horizon, it vanishes when you attempt to grasp it. The great paradox is that while we feel most afraid to let go of this illusion, it is only in seeing through it that we experience true freedom. The ego is a master illusionist, a trickster that convinces us we are separate from the vast flowing reality of existence. From the moment we begin to form memories, the mind starts weaving a story in which we are the central character. It gives us a name, a history, and a collection of preferences. And it calls this bundle of ideas me. But if we pause and examine this self, something curious happens. It begins to dissolve. The ego is not a thing, but a process, a constant narration trying to solidify something that is, by nature, fluid. It thrives on comparison, judgment, and control, always seeking to defend its fragile sense of separateness. Yet it is this very illusion of separateness that causes suffering. It creates a boundary between me and the world, between my desires and what is. And so we chase happiness always just beyond our reach, believing that if we can only secure the right circumstances, then we will finally be at peace. But peace is not found in the future, nor in the accumulation of identities. It is found when we see that the ego's boundaries were never real to begin with. The moment we stop identifying with this voice in our heads, a remarkable shift occurs. The world is no longer something out there, but something we are intimately a part of, something that is expressing itself through us as much as we are moving through it. Life is not a collection of separate things, nor are we isolated beings navigating through an external universe. Rather, existence is an unbroken flow, an inseparable dance of interdependent events. But the illusion of the self creates the false impression that we are distinct, like droplets of water, believing themselves separate from the ocean. We speak of my life as if it were something we possessed, rather than something that is simply happening. We believe in an internal observer, a little person behind our eyes watching everything unfold. Yet when we try to find this watcher, this I, that claims ownership over experience, it vanishes like mist in the morning sun. The truth is, there is no static self, only the process of being, a movement as natural as the wind through the trees. The idea of a fixed identity is like trying to grasp a flowing river and call it a single thing, when in reality it is always changing, always new. Just as a wave does not exist apart from the sea, we do not exist apart from the totality of life. We are not merely in the universe, we are the universe, unfolding in a particular way at a particular moment. When this is seen clearly, the exhausting struggle of maintaining an identity, of proving, defending, and controlling falls away. What remains is a freedom beyond words, a recognition that there was never a separate self to begin with. The illusion of the self is sustained by the constant movement of thought, an endless stream of mental activity that creates the sense of a solid I behind it all. But if we sit still and watch the mind, we notice something peculiar. Thoughts arise and pass on their own, without a thinker pulling the strings. The belief that there is someone inside our heads generating these thoughts is just that, a belief, an assumption we never question. But look closely. If you are the thinker of your thoughts, then who is the one observing them? And if you are the observer, then who is thinking? The moment we attempt to pin down the self, it slips away, revealing itself to be nothing more than a pattern of identification. Through meditation, self-inquiry, or even deep moments of stillness, we begin to see that this sense of me is like a ripple in a vast ocean. An appearance, not a thing in itself. And yet we suffer because we cling to it, fearing what will happen if we let go. But to break the illusion is not to lose something real, it is to wake up from a dream. The struggle, the anxiety, the weight of needing to be someone dissolves, leaving only a deep and effortless presence. No longer bound by the illusion of separateness, we find ourselves as the boundless, ever-changing flow of existence itself. When we believe in the illusion of the self, we live our lives trapped in an endless cycle of seeking, always chasing fulfillment, security, or meaning, as if they were objects to be possessed. But what if the very thing doing the seeking is the source of our suffering? The moment we identify as a separate self, we create an artificial boundary between me and everything else, and in doing so, we introduce fear, resistance, and an endless hunger for completion. We try to define ourselves with roles, achievements, and personal narratives, but these are like sandcastles built at the edge of the tide, momentarily convincing, yet inevitably washed away. Real freedom begins when we stop clinging to these mental constructs and recognize that our true nature is not something that can be grasped, but something that simply is. Without the illusion of a fixed self, life is no longer a struggle to become something, it is an effortless unfolding. There is no longer a need to defend, prove, or seek approval, because there is no separate entity that needs to be protected. Instead of seeing life as something happening to us, we experience it as something happening through us. We move not from a place of control, but from deep trust. There is a profound lightness in this realization, because we are no longer weighed down by the exhausting effort of maintaining an illusion. Instead, we flow with existence as it is, free, open, and boundless. The illusion of the self creates an artificial sense of boundaries, convincing us that we exist as independent entities, separate from the rest of life. But this is like a wave believing it is apart from the ocean, when in truth it has never been anything but the ocean itself. The moment we see through this illusion, everything shifts. Our sense of identity expands beyond the limits of the body and mind, and we recognize that we are not in the universe, we are the universe, momentarily expressing itself in a particular form. The wind that moves through the trees, the river that carves through the valley, the stars that burn in the night sky. These are not things outside of us, but extensions of the same vast unfolding of existence. The fear of death, the need for control, the constant battle to define ourselves, these lose their grip when we understand that we were never truly separate to begin with. Life becomes lighter, not because problems disappear, but because we stop resisting the natural flow of change. We begin to move with life rather than against it, no longer trying to grasp onto something permanent in a world that is always shifting. Without the illusion of a fixed self, we are free to experience reality in its fullness, not as a divided observer, but as the totality itself, open, limitless, and inseparable from the great cosmic dance. So, if the self is an illusion, what does that mean for you? It means that the struggle to define, defend, and maintain a separate identity has been unnecessary all along. It means that the fear of losing yourself was only the fear of losing an illusion. And in seeing through this illusion, something extraordinary happens. Not an annihilation, not emptiness, but a vast and boundless freedom. Without the weight of the imagined self, life no longer feels like a personal battle to be won or lost. It becomes a spontaneous unfolding, effortless and free. There is no longer a rigid boundary between you and the world, no longer a need to resist change, because there was never a separate you to begin with. What remains is simply life happening, like waves rising and falling, without a need for control, without a center, without an observer apart from the dance itself. And so the great paradox is this: in letting go of the self, we do not lose anything real. We awaken to the vastness of what we have always been, not a separate drop, but the entire ocean, not a fleeting moment of existence, but existence itself. And in that realization, we are finally, deeply, and truly free.